Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the latest installment of the Chapter Leadership Advancement Series, or CLASS. My name is Trina Madison. I'm Director of the ACR's Office of Chapter and Member Engagement. The topic for tonight's session is State PACs and RAN. Joining us as guest panelists tonight are Dr. Andrew Wu, Chair of the Radiology Advocacy Network, and Ted Burns and Melody Ballesteros from our ACR Government Relations Office. We do record these sessions and make them available afterwards, so if you know someone that wasn't able to join us, certainly point them to these afterwards, and if there's something that you missed, you'll be able to catch up. A few housekeeping issues. All of you as attendees will be muted throughout the duration of the call. However, if you have questions, our presenters have said that they would like to take those throughout the presentation, so please feel free to either raise your hand, which you can do with a small icon next to your name, or submit a question via the question function in your control panel. I'll be monitoring those, and if you'd like to ask your question, you will be unmuted to do so. And otherwise, I'll read your questions out so that Dr. Wu, Ted, and Melody can address them. We do try to honor the hour and not go beyond that, so we will be finishing promptly at 9 o'clock this evening. Typically, our panelists will make themselves available after if you have additional questions that haven't been answered. So I'm hoping Dr. Wu, Ted, and Melody will do the same. And with that, again, I want to thank you and turn things over to Dr. Wu to get us started.
Thank you very much, Trina. Tonight we're going to talk about radiology advocacy at both the national and state levels and the importance and some of the logistics of political action committees. Again, I'm chair of the Radiology Advocacy Network, and I'm a private practice IR rad in Raleigh, North Carolina. And all of you know Ted and Melody. Ted is director of RADPAC, and Melody is the assistant director of the Radiology Advocacy Network. Can we switch the slide, please?
I didn't. Sorry about that.
Good help is so hard to find today. Anyway, let's start off by talking about advocacy. And the first thing I wanted to do tonight is just to review some basic definitions and concepts. The word advocate comes from the Latin word ad, which means to, and the Latin word vocare, which is to call. And it kind of based on that, when we advocate, we're really trying to influence some aspect of society. And in our case, we're trying to influence our government and its laws. Next, a couple of fundamental concepts about advocacy. And when I've thought about advocacy, you kind of take this stuff for granted, but you don't really think about it in quite these terms. So it's good just to review it real quickly. First, advocacy involves building relationships and building credibility, and ultimately building political capital. And with these, the relationships that we got, the credibility that we build, and the political capital that we can obtain, we get legislative victories, we get legislative wins. Second, advocacy it's a long-term process, and most definitely an investment. If you are in the business of medicine, and in our case, we're all radiologists, we're also in the business of advocacy to support radiology. And this is not only for your practice, but also for the profession as a whole. So let's talk for a second about some misconceptions about advocacy. And I want to thank my colleague, Chris Ulrich, for really spelling these out. First, the notion that you as a private practicing radiologist cannot make a difference is absolutely false. You know, we can all make a difference. We just need to get involved. We are fully able to get our message across. There was a survey done, 90% of legal aids rated physicians as either effective or somewhat effective lobbyists. So we as radiologists are completely capable of advocating. And as we've said many times when we go to the Hill, we are the experts in our field. Next, people believe that you got to spend a lot of time to be a successful advocate. You know, the truth is consistent and small amounts of time are what we need to build these relationships. And as we said just a moment ago, you know, the relationships are critical in the political world. You know, the bottom line is politics is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So I'm just going to take a moment to talk about the history of the Radiology Advocacy Network. The RAN was created in late 2011. I believe it was around November to promote grassroots advocacy in the ACR. We had some very poor responses to political calls to action at that time. And I actually spoke to Ted about a practice leaders network that we had started in North Carolina. And to be truthful about it, you know, the Practice Leaders Network is really just a glorified email list. But we had used it for a call to action for a medical malpractice bill in our state, and we really had a really great response. It worked, at least I thought, because we had radiologists encouraging their colleagues to respond. You know, a personal level of communication was there, and we feel that that's the basis of the RAN. So a glorified email list at the state level finds its niche in advocacy, and then sort of morphs into the RAN at the national level. So kind of the point of all this is that the same advocacy tools and concepts, it doesn't matter whether it's a state or at the federal level, the concepts work. Well, this slide really shows how far the RAN has come in just a couple, 3 years. Again, we started the RAN in very late 2011 and started talking about the RAN at the AAMCLC in 2012. And we had 4 states involved, obviously here in North Carolina. And we got buy-in from our friends in South Carolina with Dr. Naveen Parti, in Minnesota with Dr. Kevin Smith, and in the state of Washington with Dr. Justin Smith. Now, if you look on the map on the right, all in blue, we currently have involvement with just about every state in the country. And we just figured out why we didn't have a very good presence in Illinois, and we think we got that one corrected. So all the largely populated states are involved. We think that we've done a good job. And if anyone on this webinar is in the state that isn't in RAN, please let us know. Okay, so it's really great. That was a little quick on the slide there. But it's really great to have all the states involved, all that blue on the prior slide. But how have we done where it matters, meaning with our grassroots advocacy effort? The answer is we've done pretty well. Back in 2012, with a call to action concerning the utilization rate, we got 397 responses with over 35,000 plus email requests sent. Not very good. With last year's call to action on SGR, 24% of the membership took action. And with this year's calls to action on the permanent SGR fix, which they're actually voting on now, Ted tells me, our response rate has been in the 20% range, and that's with very little lead time to let people know that the call to action is coming. So in just a few years, we went from a 1% response rate to a 24% response rate. So what changed? How did that all happen? Well, several things I think have made the difference. As that map showed, we went from 4 states to just about the entire country being involved. So we built an infrastructure in our membership. Next, and I think very, very importantly, we improved our advocacy tool. If you remember several years ago, to respond to a call to action, it was very time consuming. You had to put in your username and ACR password, required lots of clicks and a good bit of typing of all your demographic information, way too cumbersome. Now to respond, it takes 4 clicks, including opening the email. I timed it myself, about 10 seconds total. It's just hard to make it any easier than that. Well, what else changed? We updated our website. We view ourselves as really one-stop shopping for radiology advocacy. We have information about federal issues on the website and links to state GR issues. There's a lot of great information there. And a thank you to Eugenia Brandt for keeping up with all the state GR issues in the state GR committee. What else has made a difference? I think most importantly, we have engagement from our membership, from folks like you and your colleagues. All right, so does all this stuff, you know, all these fancy tools and ability to respond that we just talked about, and you're being involved, does it make a difference? Well, with the SGR patch last year, it's quite evident that advocacy does equal results. in the patch that the President signed, we all know that there are 3 radiology provisions. The use of appropriateness criteria for high-dollar imaging for Medicare, the provision requiring CMS to reveal the MPPR data, and the dampening clause for Medicare cuts and reimbursement. The interesting thing is we were the only specialty society to have provisions in the patch. If you think about that, that's pretty remarkable. And I spoke to Melody the day the patch was signed, and I can say that the GR office received several phone calls from other specialty societies just asking us how we did it. And I think the answer is, A, we have a fabulous, an absolutely fabulous GR staff, as well as B, significant involvement from our membership. Okay, so that's ran at the national level. We're doing well. Let's chat for a moment about advocacy at the state level, because it works everywhere. You just got to get involved. I can speak about North Carolina, as I've been here for over 20 years. In our state, we do have a very, very active chapter, and we do have a lobbyist separate from the medical society. I mentioned how we used our Practice Leaders Network to support a Med-Mal bill. We still use our Practice Leaders Network to discuss various legislative issues. For instance, we still have Certificate of Need laws in North Carolina, which we've had ever since I've been here, and they're about as restrictive as they are anywhere in the country, which for us is a good thing. And in just about every legislative session, whether it be a short session or a long session, CON is challenged. It's the usual suspects, the orthopod, urologist, ophthalmologist, but we still have CON. We still have it after 20 years. It's up again. It'll probably never get out of committee. Why is that? It's due to the relationships that we've established, the credibility that we've established with our legislators and the political capital we've gained. Let me talk just for a moment about Vermont. This is a great example of advocacy. In December of 2011, there was a proposed rule for Vermont Medicaid to reduce payments for radiology by 21% in the year to come, and that was on top of a 25% reduction in the same codes. The Vermont Radiology Society, the Medical Society, the ACR, responded with letters to Vermont Medicaid, media engagements, recruitment of other stakeholders. 50% of the radiologists in the state sent letters or communications to Vermont Medicaid. And ultimately, the reductions were reversed to 2%. And that's a huge win, a huge win. And again, the fact is that advocacy works. Well, with the success of RAN with call to action at the national level, we decided to provide support for state chapters. I don't know how many of you have heard that. Our first real run with this was in Massachusetts. This summer, the State Senate in Massachusetts included a provision in its budget allowing advanced practice nurses to practice independently, and that included interpreting tests, including imaging, and that was without any physician oversight. So the RAN provided a call to action to all Massachusetts radiologists asking for letters in opposition to this provision. 499 letters were sent in response to the call to action, and ultimately the legislature's conference committee did not include the provision, giving the radiologists a legislative victory. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read a quote from Dr. Philip Rogoff, the president of the Massachusetts Radiology Society, and it goes like this. It seems clear that the call to action that went to legislators statewide had a significant impact. The APNs have been very active in soliciting support for their cause. The same is not true for physicians, and our legislators needed to hear a counterpoint of view. We are unusual in that we were able to provide this via the ACR call to action, and will continue to do so in the future. My sincere thanks go to the ACR for facilitating this technology. I should also mention that we were the first chapter to utilize this technology at a state level. So as this little fella shows, today we won. So you know, the reality is at the state level, we can help. We can help in identifying your advocates. We can help with a targeted advocacy campaign. RAN and RADPAC can assist. You know, we talked about relationship building. We can assist in that by scheduling a site visit or helping to organize or host a PAC event. As an example, my practice just hosted a site visit with my House member who just happens to be on the House Ways and Means Committee, one of the committees of jurisdiction for our world. And I'm working on hosting a PAC event for another North Carolina House member who happens to be on House E&C, another critical committee for our world. So we can help. The other thing we can do, as we just talked about in Massachusetts, is we can help with a call to action. If there's a state GR issue that you would like your membership to respond to, we need an explanatory email sent to Melody. We need some information, a description of the issue, a list of bullet points, a timeline. We need to know who your targeted audience is. In other words, which members you'd like to contact, everybody or certain people. As we can get fairly granular with this, is just sending it to members in a given congressional district. And we need a draft letter that we can either send out as is or edit. I believe at this time, if you can flip the slide, please. I think, Melody, you're going to take over.
Yes, thank you. So now you've heard the history of the Radiology Advocacy Network, and you've heard of where we are today. So now we're going to move into where we're going tomorrow. And as everybody is aware, social media is now one of the most used forms or formats for advocacy and running campaigns. So what we thought was we need to move the RAN into that realm of the world. So we're going from RAN point 1 to RAN point 2. And one of the things we've done to get us into that realm is we've now attained an app that we will use and we will launch during this meeting in 2015. The app will host everything that you need that you can now get from our website will now be at the palm of your hand. So you will have access to schedules. Now the schedules will range from anything that is going on in the ACR that is ACR related specific, or it could include anything from a town hall meeting in your state, or a hearing that maybe we have interest in, and especially if it's in a committee of jurisdiction, if your representative is in a committee of jurisdiction and they're having a meeting, especially back at home in the state, then we will let you know, and that will come up on your schedule. Talking points, which is very big when you go and meet with your members of Congress, you'll have those readily available to you. We'll include videos and anything that you could use for media or for presentations later on. It'll also have a link to all of our social media. So our Twitter and our Facebook will be there, and that will connect you directly. So if you're on the Hill or you're doing something and you want to tweet about it and tag us, you can do that from this app. It'll include a directory. In the past, anytime you came to the Hill, we handed out the little booklets so you knew where everybody's office was. Well, now you have it at the palm of your hand. It'll also include maps, a link to the PAC site so you can make donations directly from your phone if that's what you want to do, and a lot of other cool things that will develop as the time goes by and as the need arises. So we're really excited because I think that this is really where this is the direction we need to move into. Obviously, our membership appreciates the calls to action and how easy they are to complete, and so this is just another step to that. And that will also be available via this app. If I ever send out a call to action, you will get a message on your phone telling you that, you know, please respond, and you can do it via your phone. You can do it when you get back to your desktop. The choice is yours, but it will also show up here. So we're really excited, and we can't wait to launch it. And I will now pass it over to Ted Burns.
Thanks, Melody. So many of you on the phone, I would assume, are familiar, or at least hope you are familiar with RADPAC, which is our political action committee. We've been around for about 15 years now, and we've grown tremendously over the years. And just like a lot of other things, you see states kind of taking, kind of following the trend at the federal level when it comes to trying to get more engaged, more politically active, and of course that would mean people becoming more and more interested in having a PAC. We with RADPAC do not get involved in state PACs. RADPAC only gets involved in the House and the Senate races, and those members of Congress and those federal candidates. We don't get involved in presidential, and we don't get involved in gubernatorial or state legislative races. That said, we have seen a little bit of a trend with more states wanting to get more politically active with a state PAC, and there's a variety of different things we try to advise them before they go into this so that they're not going into it naive or with a certain level of expectation that may not be realistic. But that said, there's so many things out of our control for each different state with the way the process works and the laws that we really can only be just kind of an advisory type of resource. So it depends on the state legislature and climate. A lot of folks really need to take a look as to whether it's worth having a state PAC depending on how long the legislature is in session at the state level. For instance, in Virginia, it alternates every year between 60 and 90-day sessions. In Texas, they have a full session, I believe, most of the year, and then they take the next year off. And so because every state has a very different legislative schedule and type of session, that has to be taken into consideration. If there's only a 60 or 90-day session, it probably would be very difficult to really have a lot of opportunity and time to go ahead and have political events and really build those political relationships, particularly, for instance, in a state like Virginia, where we are located near, the people who are in the state legislature, they actually have full-time jobs as well, and they're allowed to have those full-time jobs. So when they're not, voting on an issue at the Capitol in the state in Richmond, then they go back to wherever they're from and they go about their professional lives, and so they're not really around all the time like members of Congress are. And then, really using the state lobbyists and the state medical society, executive directors for either the Radiological Society or the Medical Society as a resource. Many of the states have at least its own executive director. A lot of states use the State Medical Society to kind of manage the society, and really trying to network with your counterparts and all the other physician organizations to determine, hey, are you guys using a PAC? Has it been successful? What is the process? How long does it take for you to really have impact, and things of that nature? The next slide, please. So what does it take to administer? That's the other thing. A lot of people say, we have a big issue coming up. We should have a state PAC, and if we create a state PAC, we'll have all these resources. We can have all these political events, make all these contributions, and really have an impact. But what they fail to realize is who's going to actually administer the PAC? Who is going to be able to do all the filings of the PAC? A lot of people don't realize with RADPAC, we are required by law to file every month every contribution that comes in and every disbursement that goes out. And that can be a very, very heavy transactional load to record and file. And that takes someone full-time for RADPAC to do that. Obviously, at the state level, it would be not as significant, but still you would require someone to kind of help assist you with that process and finding the people appropriate to do it. Do you have the resources to pay for that person to do it, et cetera? Is that the scope of the position of the person who's representing your society, either as a lobbyist or executive director? And then also you need to find the radiologists who are willing to make the ask and lead the effort. Just because you have a state PAC, the money just doesn't come in because you have it, because it exists. I can assure you, based off my experience with RadPack, just because we exist doesn't mean that people just send checks in just for fun. I mean, we really have to work and grind every day at making sure we sell the value of RadPack to people and get their buy-in to contribute and support our efforts. And that takes really someone who's willing to shake the trees and really help them understand the value at even a state level, especially when you're competing against RadPack at the federal level. Maybe even the state medical society has their own PAC, and all of the other, your state medical society dues you have to pay, your state radiological society dues, the dues to the ACR. There's a lot of pools on the money, and so you have to try to identify, is this going to be a situation where people are going to still want to give to the state PAC when they have all these other demands? And then what's the society's climate like? Again, this is something I just kind of touched upon as far as how active or apathetic the state radiological society may be. But, we deal with, I would say, 43 or 44, 45 state societies. There's some that don't have a real formal or organized chapter, but of the ones we deal with, every state radiological society chapter kind of has their own unique personality and their own way of going about how they operate. And for some of them, it's not conducive to have a state PAC, even if they really think it would be valuable or really important. They just don't have the dynamics there. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the resources. If it's a rural state, they just may not have the pure numbers. You may only have, in North Dakota or, Wyoming, you may only have 50 radiologists. So how much money can you really raise? So these are all the types of things when considering if you want to have a state PAC that you really need to factor in before you just kind of jump in and commit to doing it. You really need to kind of give it some pretty full analysis to make sure that when you go into it, you're not going into it blind. Okay, last slide. And then, of course, and this is kind of backwards as the last slide, this is probably something that really is the determining factor, and that's what types of issues necessitate someone thinking that you need a PAC to begin with. As Dr. Wu said, certificate of need, scope of practice, medical liability. Some of these issues are issues every single year, both at the federal level and in every single state. And you can kind of count on those issues. Self-referral being another big issue at the state level that's really coming up and becoming a big deal after the Maryland example. So, do you have enough of those issues that you haven't asked? You haven't asked for someone to give you money for your state PAC, but then you haven't asked when you go to an actual state legislator to say, hey, we're doing this event, we want to educate you on our issues, and these are the issues. Or are you kind of a state society, state radiological society, where really in that state legislature there's not a lot of healthcare activity, or maybe there's just not a lot of movement on healthcare issues? I will give you an example. I know, for instance, in New Jersey, we had a huge dip in RadPack contributions from New Jersey because we were told by some of the most active New Jersey radiologists that they had a huge ambulatory tax issue, and that they decided, kind of as a state radiological society, to really start allocating the resources more to fight that issue than some of the issues we were doing at the federal level with RadPack, and certainly that was their prerogative, and we were very supportive of them trying to fight those issues because it had a pretty big impact at the state level for them. But again, the issues really drive the need. You don't just want to go through this process of creating a state PAC just for the sake of having it. You want to make sure that you're going to raise money and be able to utilize those resources to really create a positive impact on some of the legislative issues impacting you at the state level. And so these are all the things to consider. What I'll do, if there's an opportunity, Trina, to email all those who are on the call participating, we'll send a list of all the states that have a state PAC. And if any of you all on the phone are interested in learning more, or maybe just kind of want to run some ideas by me, I'm happy to shoot me an email, or happy to talk to you on the phone and kind of give you some training exercises on how to teach people how to raise money, or other resources that may be available as far as compliance when it comes to filing in each state. But we want to be a resource, but we don't really do a lot. We kind of let each state do their own thing. I do know, for example, North Carolina, Dr. Wu and many of his colleagues there, they have several mini state PACs. They kind of have them in geographical groupings, and I'm sure he could serve as a resource on how that works as well if anyone's interested in that type of format.
Great. You know, and let me just add one thing to that, in that if there is interest in those states in trying to establish a PAC, I think that leadership and the state chapters in other states that do have a PAC established would be more than happy to offer some guidelines and tips, and I think Ted and myself and other folks, we can help get you in the right direction to really see if a PAC would work in your state, and if you want to do it, how to go about doing it, and things to, you know, help you create a checklist to get through the process. Because as Ted said, we're a little unusual. We do not have one state PAC. I think there are 8 or 9 little PACs. It's all geographic, in part because then we stay off the radar. No one really knows how much we really contribute. It's kind of off the record because each individual PAC doesn't contribute that much, but in aggregate, it's actually a very significant sum. So it's a way we've developed, and it was developed before my time, but we found it to be very, very effective having that set up. Anyway, you know, the bottom line out of all this stuff we've chatted about is that physicians, you know, we as radiologists, we cannot delegate the responsibility for advocacy. Radiology, you know, even though there are 35,000 or so ACR members, the reality is it's a small organization. And as such, ACR membership really has to be engaged. And as Napoleon once said, 10 people who speak make more noise than 10,000 who are silent. And so this is a slide that some of you have probably seen before if you've seen me at at the AMCLC, one of my little talks. And as I've said at those talks, with this slide coming up, you know, there's a lot of pressures that we're facing today. And ultimately, we really only have 2 choices when we come up against these pressures. We can either fight or we can give up. And I think all of us are willing to fight. And that's why we're here on this call today.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Wu and Ted and Melody. Actually have a couple of questions that have come through. One, Melody, since you were talking about social media, someone has asked, does RAN have a Twitter handle?
Yes, we do. And it's ACR RAN. That is our Twitter handle.
Okay.
And RadPAC has one too, at RadPAC, sorry. Oh. Shameless plug.
Great, thank you. This one, Dr. Wu or Ted probably best to answer, but the question is, what are some ways to stay abreast of the potential legislative issues at the state level?
You know, Dr. Wu, I'll tackle this first. The best thing to do really is to get on some sort of a communication schedule with Eugenia. Eugenia, we have, when I first was hired at the ACR, I was actually hired to do state legislative monitoring and analysis, if you will, and we have had over the course of years a database that monitors all the imaging-related legislative issues in each state, to the point where, you know, you put in pet, and we would even get dog licensure laws that would come up, and obviously that wasn't relevant to what we were trying to find, but we can find almost any issue that's related to radiology or imaging in any state. It comes up, it's a daily feed we get in the morning, and then Eugenia kind of combs through all of those, and as she does that, she's able to contact the state chapter if they see that something's coming up that's a major concern. But, you know, reach out to Eugenia or reach out to your RAN contact in your state. You know, if you have a state lobbyist, that's another great person to start with, and make sure that you're kind of aware of what's happening relating to the profession.
Yeah, I think I really don't have a whole lot to add to that. I will say that in North Carolina, those of us who are heavily involved in the legislative activities downtown in our state capital, we get that feed. It's sent out to a group of us. Every couple of days we get something that talks about really anything healthcare related or close to our world. So we kind of all look through that, and then our lobbyist, he's got his ear to the ground and is always listening to what's happening and getting a feel. So I think those are two very, very important approaches. And I think the other thing that Ted mentioned is that in states, in many states, especially those that are very active politically, there are certain individuals who have taken the time and effort to learn about this world of politics, and just sort of try to get information from them. Show your interest, pay attention, see what you can learn from them, and get involved that way. Because in our state, I got to be honest with you, you know, Chris Ulrich, who is on the Council Steering Committee, he actually used to head the State GR Commission, but he really was an inspiration. I mean, he knew everything about everything. So I've always kind of followed along with Chris, and you know, you find that one individual, and you can learn an awful lot.
Great. And just for everyone on the call, as a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so either by typing into the question panel or clicking the icon to raise your hand. Also, it does not have to be a question. If you have something that you'd like to contribute or share with everyone else on the call about your own experience with state legislation, with state PACs, or the RAN, then certainly please let us know that. I'm just
going to ask a question. I don't know if Dr. Rivard is on the call. I don't know. Do you have the list there?
I can see the list, and I do not see him logged on currently.
Okay, because he was very influential in trying to deal with some issues in the state of Mississippi. So, well, let me ask a question of our participants. Is there anything that we can do to help you in your state? Is there anything, you know, from the advocacy standpoint that we're not supplying for your state? Because that's the one thing that is sometimes difficult for us to know is, what can we do better to help you?
Okay, we'll let people process that and submit if they'd like. In the meantime, I do have another question for you all. Are there resources to support radiologists who may be interested in running for elected positions at the local or state level?
I can help with that. There are two really, really good resources. One, if you're a member of the AMA, you can go to the AMA Candidate School, and the AMA Candidate School, I believe, is every June or July. You have to be a member of the AMA. It's run by a buddy of mine I used to work with at the Federal Election Commission. It's a very good candidate school. I believe it runs about a week. It's a pretty big commitment. And even though it usually focuses on federal candidacy, the same principles you learn apply at the local or state level. They go through the whole gamut of, you know, how to do press, how to hire staff, how to raise money, how to do TV ads, how to hire consultants, you name it. In addition to the AMA Candidate School, there's also a 2-day candidate school that the specialty physician community runs. I'm on the board, if you will. It's only a board of about 3 or 4 of us. There's about 15 of the physician specialty groups that are involved, and we've had a couple of our radiologists in the past go through that school. Pat Basu is one. I believe Steve Ferreira has gone through that. And we think within the next 4 years we're going to probably have about 5 radiologists running for Congress. We've already started planning and mapping out each of their respective races, where they're going to run and how they're going to kind of set up their process. I'm happy if anyone's interested to talk through that, particularly if you're interested, if you're particular, you know, if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. We've also done introductions with party committees and state party committees and state with the state party representatives, et cetera. We can really be a very valuable resource, even if you want to run for, you know, county commissioner or you know, something on a very local level. We can still give you all the resources and tools.
Great. Thanks, Ted. Dr. Wu, it looks like you may have stumped everyone, or you all are just doing a fantastic job in terms of providing resources, because I haven't had anyone step up to say what you could do more of or what they're missing. I do have another question, however. And let's see. Looks like I'm attending the ACR 2015 meeting and interested in any sessions that may help us to learn more about these issues or advocacy in general. Are there particular sessions that we might attend during ACR 2015?
Melody, you want to go after this one?
Well, we have two sessions that will be talking about advocacy. The first session is actually tailored to the Young Physicians and Resident Fellow section, which will take place on Saturday. I believe the start time is at 10 a.m. on Saturday. And then the second time that we will have a session is Thursday at 8 a.m.
So, is that, hold on, what time is the Rebecca and Chris one? Is that on Saturday or is that, I thought that was on Sunday.
Yeah, that's, well, yeah, there's that one too, which is, I get, was it GR 101?
Yeah, so there's a RADPAC session, RADPAC 101, kind of how RADPAC works. A separate session is kind of legislation, civics class 101, how a bill becomes a law. I believe that's on Monday.
Is that Monday or Sunday? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure, but we can send a, you know, if we have the opportunity to send out a review or summary of the call, we can include the exact time and location.
And I think that Advocacy 101 lecture, I'm actually very excited about it because, you know, we learn all this stuff in government 5th grade class, and the fact is that there's a reality to this. and you don't really appreciate the reality till you get into the process and see the beast work. And I think go ahead.
We'll also have Steve Ferreira, who is a radiologist. He's one of the ones who's interested in running for Congress. He served for a year, Robert Wood Johnson Fellow on the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House. He's going to talk about his experience being on the Hill, working for a committee, how that process works. In addition to, you know, the process works through a actual member of Congress's office, how it works through the committee office. But we've got the Advocacy 101, we've got how a bill becomes a law, we have RADPAC 101, and then we have the RAN. So there's certainly 3 or 4 different advocacy tracks, if you will. And like I said, we can give you the time and locations of all that and highlight it for folks.
And then I think the other very important, I guess it's a yearly thing, not I guess, it is a yearly session, is the Hill Prep session, where you kind of hear about the issues. There's a little scenario that folks Rebecca and Chris go through about how to talk to people, you know, what is an effective approach to a legislator, what is not an effective approach. And then I think going to the Hill is an incredibly eye-opening experience to walk through the halls of Congress, talk to your legislators, talk to their legal aides. You get a real feel for the process, and that in itself is a great experience in terms of trying to understand what we're trying to do and how we go about doing it.
Great, thank you. And I'll just add on to what Ted and Dr. Wu said in terms of the schedule. Certainly we can send out follow-up information afterwards. Also on the website, nicely this year you'll be able to kind of track different pathways, and there's certainly an economics and advocacy pathway, so all those sessions they mentioned will be color-coded and easy to find in that program and on the ACR 2015 mobile app. So to follow Melody in terms of talking about the RAN app, there's also one for 2015 that can help you to navigate that larger program. Not so much a question here, but a comment, and not sure if you all want to add anything on this. The comment is, it's ironic that so many RADs spend so much time stressing about their failing incomes or falling incomes and increasing productivity expectations, yet they don't have time to make the RAN phone calls or to send email to their legislators.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I don't know. It's mystifying to me. I will say that in terms of our involvement, the national average for a medical society response rate to a call to action is 7%. So as we run in the 20 to mid 20% range, we're actually doing, astoundingly well. I don't completely understand. I bug my associates. I know it sounds kind of big brotherish, but I know who in my practice responded and who didn't. And it's sort of, there's always certain situations. They're gone on vacation. Their daughter's sick. I understand that. But yeah, I'm mystified because I don't the things that I find that motivate people. One is money, and two is time off. And we are really working very hard to fight for what we have, and the people don't respond sort of amazes me at times. So I agree. I think all you can do, and I think it's taken me a long time in my own practice, but I keep on pushing the benefits of what we're doing. At the state level, I talk about CON, 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 and I tell them it's an investment in their future. A contribution, it may seem like a lot, you may not like the process, but it's an investment in the future. And it's the same message at the federal level, that look at what we're doing. We got all these things going. We can make a difference. You just got to keep on, at that last slide that's still sitting up there, you got to kind of fight through it and try in practice meetings to convey the fact that we do have successes, but we just got to keep on going at it and try to urge them to participate and not be a freeloader. I mean, I've actually used that term in my own practice. I hate to say it, but, I said, don't be a freeloader. I don't know, Ted, you got any thoughts?
The only thoughts I have is I think people are often kind of intimidated by the fact of how much time it takes or how much money is expected for RADPAC. We're not expecting thousands of dollars. We're not expecting you to spend hours of your time contacting members of Congress. Like Dr. Bruce said, it takes 10 seconds, literally 10 seconds, to click through the email prompts, and your message is already sent through the system. It takes 5 seconds to write a check for $100, to RADPAC, and cumulatively that adds up. We get about 15% of all radiologists, members of the ACR, contribute to RADPAC. Industry standards between 12 to 14%, so we're a tiny bit better than that industry standard, but that means 85% still don't give, and $100 is more than zero. And so I think it's kind of breaking down those perceptions of what's really expected versus the reality of how much you can have an impact even by just 5 to 10 seconds of your time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about these misconceptions, and that goes back to one of those earlier slides about the time involvement and the money involvement. And I think that we as physicians are so intimidated, and I think most citizens in this country are completely intimidated by this political process. And it's everything from I'm just a little person on the street, what can I do to influence things, to what I do won't make any difference, and I don't have the time for it, and there's a zillion excuses. I think we have to work on getting over that. And I think, to be honest with you, that's one of our, in our advocacy world, that's one point that it's something that everyone can do. These misconceptions are issues that we haven't stressed enough to our membership. And that's one of the biggest things that I want to try to get across in this meeting and the next meeting, is that we can all do this, and it doesn't take a lot. But we just got to start somewhere and take little steps and little amounts of time on a consistent basis, and then we'll go somewhere as a group. I think that's one of my biggest missions for our membership.
This is just a quick FYI. I'm watching C-SPAN because this is the great life we sign up for in this profession. And right now we're on the last of, I believe there are 6 or 7 amendments. It looks like there's a good chance this last amendment, we want all amendments to fail, which means if the Senate passes the SGR permanent repeal, that it does not have to go back to the House. It goes right to the President's desk, and it looks like we're lining up in pretty good shape that by the end of the night tonight, the Senate is going to pass this. Just one last
Great.
amendment that's coming up. It's on therapy caps, but Senator Hatch is speaking against it for the sake of passing the bill as is. So this is good news.
Great.
Great. Well, we are just a little bit before 9 o'clock.
History in the making.
Yeah. It doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in or hands raised, and I think between Ted's update on the most current events happening right now, and then the last messaging from Dr. Wu there with respect to what individuals can do, I think we may be at a good closing point. Are there any other final comments, Melody, Ted, or Dr. Wu, that you'd like to make?
Well, I'd like to thank everyone. I'll just say something real quickly. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy day. You know, we're all kind of struggling to find time to do anything. So thank you so much. Appreciate your interest. And hopefully we'll see you in Washington in a few weeks.
Yeah, and ditto for me. But just to reiterate, if you need anything at all, if you have any other questions, or if you couldn't think of something right now and something comes up when you get off this call, please don't hesitate to contact me or Ted, and we'll get back to you with whatever information you need and any guidance that we can provide to help you get involved in advocacy. That's what we're here for. So thank you for participating tonight.
Thank you.
Great. And just before we sign off, my thanks to our panelists tonight. To those of you that joined us on the call, again, we are recording this, so we'll make it available after the fact. If there are future sessions that you would be interested in, please provide that feedback to us. My colleague, Tanya Coogan, typically runs these and is always looking to get suggestions for future sessions. Again, we hope to see you at ACR 2015, and if you're there, further expanding on our class series, we'll have our Chapter Leaders Workshop on Saturday, so we hope to see you there. And with that, I will say good night to all.